Support for Podcast by Night is provided by Midnight Syndicate. To learn more, please visit midnightsyndicate.com. Welcome once again, everybody, to Podcast by Night. My name is John.
I'm Jen.
And we're here with our supplemental / review segment of the podcast. As many of you know, a giant bomb in the world of darkness has just been dropped in the form of Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, or commonly known as V5.
Yes, this has been a long-waited for new rendition of the classic World of Darkness game, and it just dropped last Thursday, which was my birthday. I thought that was fortuitous.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday to me. It was a great birthday, and I got all the text messages about, oh my god, they did this thing in V5, what? So I was constantly looking at my phone while I was at the salon getting my nails done. Because somebody was having some blow up about, oh my gosh, they've done this crazy thing in V5, and wow, they did this crazy thing in V5, and I was like, that's nice, guys, but my nails are wet, so I can't look at anything.
You know what? I mean, that's fantastic that White Wolf decided to honor your birthday with a new book.
It's because my last name is Wolf, so it's sort of apropos.
But you're trying to relax, and here they are.
I don't know. I thought it was a pretty decent birthday present. So, you know, it gives us a whole new aspect of the World of Darkness we can go and nerd all over. And believe me, everyone nerded all over my phone that day. It was spectacular.
Oh, yes. I remember reading all the posts. Twitter was blowing up like, oh my God, did you see what they did here? And did you see what they did there?
Yes. So needless to say, that's a big deal for any of you who have been listening to the podcast and you've been getting into it and you're like, yeah, this is great information for me as I am going into game. You're thinking, oh no, now they're changing everything. Well, just calm down a bit, slow your roll. Yes, this is a huge change for the World of Darkness. But we have a podcast we run, and when you and I, John, were discussing what we wanted this podcast to look like, I mean, we were very clear that this was a podcast designed to look at the classic World of Darkness and to kind of build that foundation for all of you who didn't grow up with it like we did in the Stone Age, but you've come into it either in the last few years or in the last few months, and this is much more of a kind of, you know, how-to guide. Here are the things you need to think about as you're entering into that vampire game. And so we wanted to reassure you that part of the podcast is not going to change. That's right.
This, just because they totally threw the baby out with the bathwater, and in a good way, actually. I remember, what I've read so far, I'm very excited to see this new turn of events in the modern nights of V5. But like Jen said, this podcast is about you, the player, and how do you relate to these characters, the clans, the sects, everything, and how you
the world,
the foundations. They're not getting rid of the history, though. Just because they've sort of, upturned everything currently, all the history is still there. Cain and Abel, the beginning, the founders, the antediluvians, everything we've already talked about is still present. And even though they may have done some things to certain clans, that the spirit, like we'll take the Brujah, for example, they're the information that we have said is still relevant because that's still how they are. They're still passionate creatures of the night that have a beast riding very close to the surface. It's still there.
Yeah, the clans at their heart have not changed. Their situations have changed, but the clans haven't changed. And what's more, many of you may be playing in established games that have been going on for months or years, and they have their own stories and their own plot lines. And V5 literally just dropped, and many have not had a chance to look at it. Many are still, like myself, are still in the process of trying to take in all this information. So most of you probably are not going to be playing in a V5 game in the next week or two. It's there's some of you who may be rolling in a game in the next month, but most of you are not going to necessarily be hit with any of this right off the bat. So, in terms of our podcast, we're going to just keep rolling the way we're rolling. And then perhaps, once we get done with where White Wolf has been, for example, in the Camarilla, we can then start introducing some of these new plot elements, because it's going to be kind of fun to establish, what came before. Okay, now here's what's coming next. So, and we'll be able to give you a little bit better analysis of V5, because we will have had a chance to kind of read through it and digest it a bit more ourselves.
Right. Yeah, exactly. When we're done laying the groundwork, the foundation of what it is to be a vampire in Vampire the Masquerade, definitely we're going to come back with the V5 stuff, because around that time, everybody should have had a chance to read the book. Everybody should know what's going on in the current world of darkness. And so we'll be able to put our unique take on what we feel players should know with that information on the stuff that we've already talked about.
And you'll, at least as the listener, have that background to understand why this is such a huge thing that just happened. Because without that, you're going to be like, oh, okay, that's important because...
Oh, that's right, Jen. That's a great point. I would love to think, a couple months down the road, we've done our Brujah podcast, then we come back and do Brujah V5, and so the listener is going to be able to take that first episode, play it back to back with the new episode, and it's going to be like, whoa, wait a minute. What you just said here totally blew up over here, and now it makes sense why everybody's so upset about it.
Yeah, it's funny you bring the Brujah up because of what happens in V5. And, I won't spoil it too much, but it pretty much goes down like you would suspect it would after listening to those podcasts. Because you're like, yep, could see that happening.
Makes total sense. They had enough.
Yeah. So in terms of Podcast by Night, that's kind of what we're seeing. Is V5 is, we're going to introduce it and bring it in as we go along, and it's kind of going to be kind of exciting to see, because then that way it kind of brings all of you in on the fun ride as well, and we kind of get to share our thoughts, because we're just brand new reading it like all of you. This is all new territory. V5's virgin territory, so I'm kind of excited.
I know I'm excited.
With that in mind, I've only had a chance to give it the barest of glances. I was on vacation last week, so I was like, vampire? What's vampire? I'm on vacation. So I haven't had a chance to do a deep dive. You've had a bit more time to process it than I have. And then of course, our friends at Pillars of Salt all have been reading it and going, oh my god, and then oh my god, and oh my god, pretty much all week. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. Every time somebody posted something on Messenger or in a tweet, I'm scouring the book.
Yeah.
I'm going through okay, where is this? What does that say?
Yeah, and I mean, I follow Twin Cities by Night on Twitter. I follow Vampire 25. I follow several of these Twitter accounts, and some of them have been speaking into it. It's been kind of fun seeing everyone's thoughts and reactions. I don't know, John, what were some of your oh my god, wow moments? What kind of blew you away so far in V5? To give everyone, for those out there who have yet to dive into it deeply, a little bit of a tantalizing taste of some of the oh my god moments.
Okay, well, I will say there are two. One is kind of spoilery, and the other one not so much, because everybody's been talking about it. I'll start with that one. The one thing that just totally I'm on board with 100%. I bought my ticket Queen Mary is sailing, is the hunger system. The idea of actually having a mechanic to be a vampire. The idea that it makes total sense that, I get it, especially for LARPs that we all play and know and love. You have to have a way to say, okay, I'm spending this much blood, so you have a pool. You have a blood pool. And it's a way to keep accounting in a live action situation. But with the hunger system, I'm really loving the idea of how that'll play out, because I'm sure you've read and all our listeners have heard already, the idea of rousing the blood because you're willing it to do something, activating a discipline, simply, raising a trait or something. And that sort of uses up your reserve. And so you have to check to see if you're going to get hungry for that. I mean, like a human, you eat a nice big steak dinner, but then you go for a run, you're using that energy up. You got to eat again. You have to eat again after you're done. Same thing with vampires.
Well, having come from a track family, I know you shouldn't eat a steak dinner. You should be having those carbs so you don't get hungry.
Oh, but that's the thing, though. I mean, you're nice, powerful vampire prowling the night. You don't want carbs. You want the steak.
Well, sucks to be them.
Sucks to be them.
Literally.
So I just like that. Yeah, but I love the idea that now that there's a way to sort of keep that front and center. Because I'll totally admit that, yeah, when I was playing vampire, I would just look at the pool and be like, okay, good, I'm still good. I've got 10 blood points. I'm fine. As opposed to now, you may have the equivalent of 10 blood points, but I'm feeling kind of peckish. I got into a scrap with that Sabat member, and I'm a little, that guy over there on the street corner is looking pretty tasty. And they put it in there for you to have to role play that.
Which I'm all for. I love that idea of having to push that hunger. I mean, some of my favorite role playing moments over the years usually involve somebody having to feed and the difficulties of that. And so I'm glad that they made a mechanic that you kind of have to follow, because I feel sometimes when you're playing the game and when you're in it, it's almost like, oh, but that's mechanic stuff that gets in the way of my role playing, and I get it, trying to always remember, well, how much blood do I have and how does that make me feel? Usually it's not on the top of your list, so you forget. And then you're like, oh, wow, I just expended a lot of blood, and I'm down to 3 blood, and, I think I better go do something about that, without really thinking through the role-playing repercussions of that. So making that, like, front and center sort of forces you to have to do that in a real way and remind you that you are a vampire. So, and that's always fun. That's always fun to have to role-play that, have to deal with that, and see what shenanigans come out of it. So
absolutely. And my second thing is House Tremere. I'm just going to leave that right there. I'm just going to leave that there because everybody who's been listening knows how I love Clan Tremere, Clan and House. Go
House
Team
and
Pyramid.
Clan. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was amazing. I just, wow, way to shake it up, guys. Kudos to White Wolf for cracking that down. I don't know whose idea that was exactly, but kudos.
They should be shot.
No, awarded.
I have to admit, because I am Tremere fangirl over here. I'm hardcore Tremere fangirl. I admit, I really liked what they did. It hurt. It hurt. It's sort of like, hurt watching your favorite character get killed hurt, It's interesting. I think it makes it very interesting. I think it'll make it even more interesting once you've heard the Tremere episode, which I'm going to warn you all ahead of time that the Clan Tremere is going to be a multi-episode podcast because there's just so much going on there. And when you hear that and then read V5, if you've not been up and up on your Tremere lore, once you get your Tremere lore and then go read V5, you're going to be like, oh, hot damn. Oh, man. It's just going to blow your mind. It's going to blow your mind. It's going to be so tasty good.
It's going to be so blown like a chantry house in Vienna.
Don't spoil that!
Sorry, I couldn't help myself. It was just right there.
Don't. Spoiler alert. I'm sorry, John couldn't keep his spoilers to himself. It is going to blow your mind, and it's going to be amazing. So I think what happens to House House and Clan Tremere is very interesting, and I'm very curious to see where that goes. The Tremere fangirl in me is already cooking up some wonderful plot ideas for how to utilize some of this story. So yeah, I think the Tremere one, that pretty much amongst our group, that blew us all away, because we're our particular group happens to be very steeped in Tremere lore. But there were some other things that are going on in the plot that just kind of blow your mind. Characters that have been there for 20 years and what happens to them. And I mean, I'll be the first to admit, I am more plot heavy than mechanic heavy. In terms of what I gravitate towards in any new supplement that comes out. I'm like, oh yeah, there's mechanic, but oh my god, look at this plot. So a lot of the things that blew my mind were all plot. Like, things that they did in London, and things that they did with the Courts of the Ashira, what they're doing with the Sabbat, the rise of the Second Inquisition. That made me so happy right there. I was like, yes! Second Inquisition.
Oh yeah. Way to totally take into account modern technology. Thanks.
Oh my gosh, I was so excited. That was
amazing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of these little plot things that as you're reading through the plot, I mean, I was getting the cliff notes while I was at the salon getting my birthday, like, mani-pedi and watching my phone blow up, and I'm just like, holy crap, what just happened? So there's a lot of those pieces I'm just silly excited about. But I think the best part for me, and this is kind of in the wake of what happened with Classic World of Darkness, because when the Classic World of Darkness line ended, they kind of were like, okay, so here's all these prophecies we've been teasing throughout all these books for all these years. Well, we're going to write one book that's going to be the end point for all these prophecies. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Now we're all done. Dust our hands off, move on. And they ended the line and moved on to Vampire Requiem. With that being that's the end. It's sort of like, I had the same feeling as you do when you watch the end of The Sopranos. And you're like, you get through this amazing epic TV show, and then they get to the end, and then it cuts to black, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, that's it? This is where you left us? And I personally always felt that was a very unsatisfying ending. So to see V5 kind of pick up the threads once again right there at that point and move the story forward, and still have the shifts and the rocking the boat that you would expect for what's coming, but doing it in such a way that it's still subtle enough, and it's world-shaking enough, but it's also subtle enough that you can have a lot of room to play around in. Because what V5 is essentially doing is shaking up the old Classic World of Darkness and turning it on its head in a way that is still true to the old Classic World of Darkness. It is playing out those themes and those storylines to their logical next progression in the story. And so I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited to see it, because the vampiric quote-unquote end times are here. And you're starting to see how this is starting to play out in V5. But how that looks, and whether this really is the end times or if it just means something else, well, that's up to you and how you tell your stories. So that's exciting to me.
Absolutely. I'm definitely looking forward to it. I can't wait to... I do kind of hunt and peck through the book, but I will sit down cover to cover soon.
Yes, and I will be doing that as well. So I'm very eager to see kind of how this evolves. I know that there's going to be some mechanic shifts for some of the clans. And we may cover some of those when we do eventually get to, like, and here's how V5 changed everything. I can only caution all of you on this in that the book literally just came out. So you may get it, read it, love it, and then go to a game and they're not running any of that. This is not the game they're running. They're not running that mechanic or that plot line, or they may have something else completely different they're doing. So as exciting as it is, just keep that in the back of your head that everyone's going to be different. I know in the LARP that we're running, we run a LARP in Los Angeles. We have our own storyline that we've been running for 3 years, and we're getting ready to start a new chronicle, moving our story forward. We're going to be incorporating aspects of V5, but we're not using the mechanic because we're a LARP. So we use the BNS mechanic because that's a LARP-based mechanic for Vampire. So, I mean, you can... There'll be games that are doing different things, and each is going to have their own different stories and their different focuses. So yeah, that's it's going to be fun to explore it, but always be careful of your community and kind of how they're running it, because your storyteller may be taking bits and pieces, or he or she should be will be using it all wholesale. Who knows?
That's right. Great advice. Manage your expectations, everybody. It's just a game. It's your game. Have fun.
It's just a game, and it is your game. So, yeah. So I'm eager to dig into V5 eventually and see how this is all changing. But as we said, for our upcoming episodes, we're going to stick with classic World of Darkness for now. We're not going to add the V5 elements until we get to a nice breaking point where we can go, and here's how V5 changes everything. So, for example, once we're done with some of the Camarilla elements, we'll probably do a whole, like, here's some of the changes we see with the Camarilla through V5, and so on and so forth. Just so you kind of get the idea of how this is playing out. So you aren't listening to our Gangrel episode and going, but that's not what V5 says about the Gangrel. It's because we're not referencing it yet. We'll get there.
We're not there yet. We're still laying that foundation, guys.
Gotta lay it nice and thick, because if you have a cracked foundation, then your whole house is going to be cockeyed.
And that's not what we want to happen here. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. This has been our quick little blurb for V5.
And we'll be back next week with a regularly scheduled episode. We are shooting for Clan Gangrel. I know we promised this a couple weeks ago, but I've been traveling, and John's been working in the hot Los Angeles heat. It's been triple digits here.
So hot. So
hot. So we've just been kind of busy with the summer months, but we will be back next week talking about our favorite nomadic bestial clan, the Gangrel.
That's right. So stay tuned, and we're going to have our special guest for that one as well. And you shoot us a line. We also have our Patreon kicked off, so we can help keep this thing going. Bandwidth is not free.
No. So if you would love to support Podcast by Night and what we're doing, you can visit our Patreon page. Please donate. And if you would just like to get a hold of us through other means, you can find us at By Night Podcast on Twitter. We're at Podcast by Night on Facebook. And we are also at podcastbynight@gmail.com. And I promise someone's checking all of those.
I check it every day.
Yes. If you just want to hit us up personally, I know I'm on Twitter at Bester. So if you know your White Wolf lore, you know who Bester is.
Oh, I love how nerdy you are.
I am totally nerdy.
Totally nerdy. Yeah, so let's hear from you. We'd love to hear what you guys think about the podcast so far. And also, don't forget to hit us up with a review on iTunes. Every little bit counts. Every little bit helps.
Yes. 5-star reviews, people. That's what gets us up and up on iTunes. And so we look forward to hearing from you.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.